to the Minocqua Brewing Company. I'm Kirk Bankstead. I kind of own this place, and you're lucky today because if you were here about a year ago, right at this time, 6 of you might have been hauled off to jail along with me for simply listening to my political speech because we have a town that hates Democrats in Minocqua, and we are a little blue dot in this town. We don't have a college or university within 2 hours of here, and that's probably one of the reasons for that. And the guy across the street, I call the Westboro Baptist Church of Minocqua. He owns the Lakeland Times, and he writes the craziest shit you've ever heard of in your life. Sorry, kids. Okay, good. Sometimes swearing in public is a sign of intelligence, they say. I think I added in public, and it probably has no source on that one. So today, what I try to do every time I'm in town is I give a beer tasting. We sample all the beers on Fridays and Saturdays, and you're always lucky when it's the beginning of August because it's just packed full of people here, and the energy is really fun. So take the ride with me. We're gonna get you drunk, and it's gonna be a lot of fun. But today's tasting is even more. Today's tasting is even more crazy because we've made national news for the past week. And the reason, and it's all because of craziness, and because it's crazy and chaotic, we're going to start you off with some THC today. So if you don't want, it's 5 milligrams of hemp-derived cannabis, THC, because that's what the Farm Bill of the United States allows. That's what the big, beautiful bill just didn't allow and gave us till November for somebody in the hemp industry to bribe Donald Trump so that we can give out marijuana again. That's all it's going to take is somebody to bribe Trump, and we'll get this back. I'm sure of it. But until then, this is on borrowed time. But if you don't like weed, don't drink this first one, okay? So a quick update to what has happened. I write an essay every Sunday, and last Sunday I announced that the Wisconsin Department of Revenue, in all of their intelligence, decided to revoke my permit to brew beer in Wisconsin. Luckily, because I said this in a very viral post. Usually, government lawyers clock out at 5 p.m. every day, and the first one, I think, because they tried to revoke our permit, the current government lawyer quit because she probably couldn't believe that they were doing this. So the new lawyer doesn't know what the hell's going on, and so we're going to be able to ride this out for a year before anything really happens. So I'm not too worried, but they revoked our permit to do business probably because we have an ongoing marketing campaign that suggests that we will give free beer out the day that he dies in both of our Minocqua tap rooms and Madison tap rooms. And that's spread like wildfire all throughout America. So, and somehow or another, some people are offended by that. I don't think many people here are offended by that. Well, we're doing half-price beer day when Mitch McConnell, when
he officially died?
When they officially announce that he's been dead for 2 months, we're going to do half-price beer day because I've said he's caused half of America's problems by pushing through Supreme Court justices illegally so that they allow Trump to do whatever the heck he wants to do. So apparently that might happen actually on August 3rd, because on August 3rd, Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky, is allowed. Before that, he's allowed to call a special election for governor if Mitch is dead. And there could be a guy named Thomas Massey who's quite ready to expose everybody in the Epstein files, even though he's a raging Republican, and he could potentially win the special election for a couple months, which would be enough to wreak havoc on the Republican Party and Trump. And so that is the reason that McConnell's corpse is telling people from telling people from hell to not announce his death before August 3rd. So if you're around Monaco or Madison on Monday or Tuesday or next week, we suspect that they will announce that he's finally dead, and you will be able to get half-price beer that day. Woo! So let's finally finish. Let's talk about. Well, I killed the punchline, but this is still funny, so I'm going to read it. We get it. This is called 8647, by the way. This 8647 THC hop water. We get it. Your liver is under constant attack. Alcohol is a dictator that takes away your freedom. It distracts while doing its dirty work. It weakens your judicial system and governing bodies. If you give it too much power, you'll never be the same. We have the solution. 8647 THC hop water. 0 alcohol, 0 calories, tastes like patriotism. 8647 THC hop water, liberate your liver. There we go. So that's, I recommend you put a lime in that bad boy and get high as hell later on. Let's move on to the next one here. This is called the Gulf of Mexico Mexican Lager. You can see this big sign here, and we have t-shirts that say the same thing. It will and will always be the Gulf of Mexico to me. I usually read this one first. We probably get in trouble and get our permits removed. We've been sued by this guy for defamation. I argue that if I lived in Chicago or New York, I'd never have any of these problems. But because I live in this little town, I get crucified because everybody's bought by everybody and they're all Republicans. But here we go. This is going to get me in trouble at some point as well. On January 20th, 2025, America's twice impeached convicted felon signed an executive order that changed the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Yes, by forgetting to reserve his only family brain cell that day, our lobotomized swamp donkey of a president unilaterally erased 5 centuries of geographic history. Regardless of what our McDonald's fart-filled blimp of a wannabe dictator says, the sane half of America, not the inbred cult of MAGA rock biters, will always refer to that body of water correctly and with respect to our southern ally. We created the Gulf of Mexico Mexican Lager for those in America who still have the courage to stand up to bullies and respect a world order that's held together by a common belief in democratic ideals and the rule of law. Salud! So the reason I talk about this one first is that I'm going to talk about a long list of reasons why we've almost been canceled at the Monaco Brewing Company. And right around the time we came out with this beer, I was visited by the FBI and the Secret Service inside that tap room for posting this comment on Facebook. Oh, and before, let me give you a story. I had just proposed to my girlfriend, who is now my fiance. She said yes. We were in Sonoma talking to my winemaker who makes this wine, which we'll talk about soon. And I was a few bottles of wine in because I was celebrating. I was going to get married to the love of my life. So all of a sudden, the radio starts playing and we hear that at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, somebody tried to assassinate the President of the United States. I rolled my eyes like 80% of the rest of America. And instead of just thinking what I thought, I wrote it on Facebook. And I wrote, either a brother or sister in the resistance needs to work on their marksmanship, or Trump just faked another assassination attempt to get rid of a bad news cycle. I tried to say the first thing to set up the second thing, but the first thing is what everybody focused on, like Fox News, the Daily Mail in London, the Blaze, all the Newsmax, all the crazy stations, they focused on it. They tried to shame me. I only just responded in a funny way and screenshotted their emails and just made it even bigger. However, I think there's probably a threshold that the FBI and the Secret Service gets tagged on the socials before they actually have to do something. And so they visited me and they asked me if I wanted to kill the president. And they asked me if I knew anybody who wanted to kill the president. And I had my lawyer with me, and he said, Kirk, just don't say anything. The only thing I said, I live streamed it, was, do you guys always have to wear black suits? Because you're just men in black. You're just stereotyping everything right now. You're proving the stereotype. They didn't love that. They went away. But what happened was that for the first time in my life, I actually was a little scared that I might be removed or disappeared into a detention center or a place where I couldn't call a friend. And that scared me. And it made me it brought me to another level, which I believe the folks in Chicago and Minneapolis are already there, because they've had to fight some of the same battles that I'm looking at fighting. So we're going to move to the next one here. Speaking of Chicago and Minneapolis and the Twin Cities, we're going to move to abolish ICE. Woo! So this beer, this beer has a butterfly on it, which stands for immigrants and migration, and that butterfly is standing on a barbed wire because that's where our immigrants are being put in detention centers. It's a mix of beauty and pain, and that's exactly what we're experiencing right now. Now, when I was questioned by the FBI and Secret Service, I can only imagine what it feels like. We've all read what it's like to be in a detention center. You know, there's a company called Geo that's spending the bare minimum on everything, including food, so these people are being fed moldy food. They're being served water that's contaminated. People are dying of sickness in these camps, and they're also dying because they're mistreated or they're not getting the right services they need while they're in there. I think the term that you might be able to use for a detention center in America, if you use the same term in Germany 70 years ago, would be called a concentration camp. And we have to recognize that for what it is. What's happening here in America. I just visited Chicago because the Department of Revenue is trying to kick me out of Wisconsin. So we have a lot of beer being sold in Chicago right now, so I'm spending a little more time in Chicago. But we've just started making donations to the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant Rights and Refugees, which is a group of 100 organizations that are all kind of fighting the resistance in their own way on the front lines. And we're also donating $500 a month to the Immigrant Bond Fund, which covers Minnesota, Illinois, Wisconsin, Indiana, and Kentucky. And it's raising money to bail out these folks who are getting disappeared. Now, obviously, it's really cool. It's really good to bail them out. Thank you. It's really good to bail them out because we got to get them out so they can get away. They'll never say that at the Immigration Bond Center, but I'm telling you, that's what's going on. There is no rule of law anymore for these immigrants, and even for American citizens who are brown-skinned, who look like they could be immigrants. There's no rule of law. There's no, what's it called, due process anymore. So we just got to get them out so we can figure out where they can go and not get screwed over again. So that's what we're doing with Abolish ICE. I'll talk more about how we can fund more of that with the Monaco Marketplace, which is my Amazon for progressives with 120 progressive businesses that we're selling. Right now it's called a fuck Trump Etsy is what I call it. But it is going to be a boycotting tool if we no longer get free and fair elections this November. But we'll talk about that when we talk about our German beer, because that's going to be true fascism when that happens. Now let's go. Angie, are we ready for Resistance Lager or Pilsner? We're going to go to Resistance Pilsner. This can, which you can see behind you right here, if you look behind our bar, was not supposed to be looking like that. The Statue of Liberty was supposed to be Kamala Harris, and the 4 presidents you see back there were supposed to be Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Ruby Bridges, and Barack Obama, who we needed to have those figures in American history for a black woman to become president. Unfortunately, Madam President, the name of this beer, never came to fruition. And so while you were all gutted, the same as I was on the day after the presidential election, I might have been a little extra gutted because I'd made a label I could no longer use, and I had to can about 60 barrels of beer very soon. So I came up with this the very next day. The Statue of Liberty is who we need to protect, and these are the 4 presidents that we needed most when America was at their time of need. George Washington for the Revolutionary War, Abraham Lincoln, the Civil War, Teddy Roosevelt for the first Gilded Age. We are now in the second Gilded Age, and the Gilded Age means there's a very few amount of people who own everything in our country, and everybody else is trying to fight for scraps. It happened 100 years ago, and it's happening again in the second Gilded Age. And then the 4th president is obviously FDR, who helped us guide us through World War II. We'd always be speaking German right now and hiling somebody if it wasn't for those folks in American history that helped us. So we started the resistance as soon as Trump was elected. My organization, the Minocqua Brewing Company, met with a couple socialists in Milwaukee who run the Turner Center, which is across the street from where the Milwaukee Bucks play. We met with some of Bernie's folks who are paid organizers in Madison, and we formed the Fighting Oligarchy Coalition, which is a group of a lot of groups who are super progressive, who are the folks who are actually trying to get Francesca Hong elected in Wisconsin right now. There's a wing of the Democratic Party that is basically done with the other wing of the Democratic Party. And one of the wings doesn't want to take money from special interest groups, and the other wing only knows how to win by taking money from special interest groups and from AIPAC and from everybody that doesn't want us to live up to Wisconsin's name and motto, which is called Forward. So these groups and I have been highly critical of our current Democratic governor, and we've been highly critical of any senators and congressmen who are rolling over and playing dead in Congress as opposed to blocking every single thing that's possible, including funding of our government, because our government is funding ICE, which is a growing paramilitary force in America that's going to turn into the Gestapo and a secret service for the president. We should be blocking them at every turn, but we are not. And the Democrats who are not blocking them, including our once wonderful Senator Tammy Baldwin, who voted to keep funding ICE, we can't do that anymore. That's why if you're from Michigan, you got to vote for El Sayed. If you're from Wisconsin, you got to vote for Hong. If you're from Minnesota, you got to vote for Flanagan. If you're from Iowa, you got to vote for Sands. And you're goddamn lucky in Illinois because you got Pritzker, who's willing to stand up to Donald Trump. He's no socialist. He's an oligarch himself, but goddamn it, he's a good one. He's one of the good ones. So that's what we got in the Midwest. I just gave you the front of my next can of beer, which is called Fighting Oligarchy, and all 5 of those politicians will be on that can of beer, assuming they win in the next 2 weeks, which I'm hoping. Okay, are we next? We got another beer coming up. This is called Mount Rushmore Summer Shandy. You will not recognize a single one of the faces on this beer because these people donated $500 to our Kickstarter campaign. and I promise to put their faces on the can of beer because that's what you do in a Kickstarter campaign. Also, all these wonderful people donated like $100 to the thing, and that's why your Birkenstocks are sullying their name. But the reason I'm pouring this is that I want to talk a little bit more about the Minocqua marketplace. So as soon as Trump got elected, I read a wonderful professor. What's Erica Chenoweth? I always think of the short blonde who is in the Wiz or whatever, Chenoweth. But it's not her, Chenoweth. It's a Harvard Kennedy School professor named Erica Chenoweth who wrote an essay about how to resist authoritarianism in America. She said you need to create economic collectives that keep the money away from the folks who are going to mess with you. When I read that, I was like, there was a light that went off in my brain because people have wanted to cancel me for 5 years. And because of that, I've had to find progressive partners. We make woke coffee now with a coffee vendor who's a bunch of teachers. We make this choice wine with a progressive company in California, and I've made a bunch of fuck Trump stuff with like woodworkers and with bracelet makers. And so I was already connected to a lot of progressive businesses. I'm like, well, if we want to build an economic collective to keep the money away from the fascists, we need to create an e-commerce site to do that, and we can do it on steroids. And so we've got now 120 progressive businesses who are all selling their stuff on the Monaco marketplace. And yes, it's a lot of junk at the moment. Or it's a lot of stuff you definitely don't need every month of your life. Let's just say that. But the goal is if we don't have free and fair elections in November, and there is a slow rolling coup attempt that is happening while I speak. Trump is going to try. He's already tried to take our voter rolls. The red states have given those voter rolls to him. They will kick Democrats off the voter rolls and they won't care if it's illegal or not. And they just lost their vote. They're like, screw it. Let us get screwed. Let us lose in court after that. We still canceled their vote in November. So that's what's happening with our voter rolls. They're going to put ICE in polling places to intimidate the hell out of black and brown people so they won't vote. They also might put ICE in swing congressional districts where Democrats vote. Guess which one is the swingiest one in Wisconsin? The 3rd congressional district, which includes the towns of Stevens Point. Oh, it's the FBI! They did this before. I'm just kidding. It is uncanny that this thing starts up completely when the first time it happened, I was like, that's the propaganda machine trying to shut me down. So it could happen even in places that don't have a ton of black and brown people because there are swing districts, which include little big towns and college towns like Stevens Point, Eau Claire, and La Crosse. Now, what would they do? They would arrest one Democrat in all those cities and disappear them and scare the bejesus out of everybody else. And I'm not so sure that if I'm 80 years old, I want to be disappeared by ICE, and I just might not go vote if that's the case. So we can expect that kind of chaos to happen too around election day. There is a slow rolling coup, and we have to be worried about that. And if we lose our elections, we have a blue plan for that, and it's through this essay and a lot of resistance books that have been written. The only nonviolent way that we can resist is through striking and through boycotting. And those are the two avenues we have. So if our little website can get a bunch of toilet paper in it, we've already partnered with Who Gives a Crap, who makes bamboo toilet paper. We partnered with some guys who make plastic bags with Trump's face on it, or for shit bags for dogs. But they also they're going to make garbage bags and Ziploc bags, and SC Johnson gives a bucket of money to MAGA all the time. It's a Wisconsin company. So we are slowly but surely building everyday goods in this website so that we can boycott en masse if and when we aren't able to have elections anymore. That's called the Monaco Marketplace. Cheers to that. Let's drink again. Let's drink some more. Freedom Trail Kolsch. Okay, now we're going to get into some of the crazy reasons why the Department of Revenue is trying to shut us down. So I talk about Freedom Trail Kolsch because this was during FDR's time. If you were caught behind enemy lines in Germany or Vichy France, you had to get back to the Allied areas, and you usually took a route through northern Africa, which got you to Casablanca, where we have Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman right here on the front of the can. That the whole movie Casablanca was about trying to go through Casablanca to get to Portugal to be able to get back to America to safety. So this is our resistance can for World War II. About a month ago, something that seemingly should have happened in Casablanca, Germany, or Vichy, France, happened to us at the Monaco Brewing Company. The Department of Revenue agents with guns seized about $25,000 worth of my beer. I know. We have a t-shirt called Free the Beer. I mean, we're Wisconsin, for crying out loud. We drink more heavily than most other states. And they stole my beer because they said I made some in Illinois. Of course, I had to make some of it in Illinois because I've been boycotted by every distributor in America because most distributors are right-wing. Imagine the guy that owns Grey Goose as a distributorship. He's able to pass that to his family for generations, and Grey Goose can never change distributors. They own him. So you think guys that own the producers' right to distribute are gonna be left wing or right wing? If they're gonna be right wing, and so distributors in America are right wing. I can't distribute my beer, so I have to sell it online. Crazily, we have a huge following all throughout America, and people are willing to spend $25 in shipping to get $50 worth of beer, which is absolutely insane. But it still happens. So I started selling my beer online, and we're making a good business out of it. The Department of Revenue 2 years ago calls me up and says, you can't sell your beer online anymore. It's not allowed. But I'm like, you let us all do it. All the breweries do it during COVID. What changed? We just changed our mind. Oh, great. So they cut off half of my market 2 years ago. And so guess what? Illinois allows you to send your beer online to people. So I had to go down and I was forced, if I wanted to keep half of my market, to partner with a brewery down in Illinois, and they're freaking great. You're drinking some of their beer right now. I had to partner with them to make booze so we could send it to people. The reason they confiscated our beer is because they didn't recognize a contract that I made with that beer to be able to serve my beer here in our tap rooms, and they took it away. There is a Supreme Court case called Granholm versus Heald that says that any exception to any rules given to any in-state alcohol makers, wine, liquor, or beer, has to be given to outstate ones as well. It's called the Commerce Clause, which is the same amendment that gave us alcohol back, I think the 21st Amendment after Prohibition. That's the Commerce Clause. And so we have a Supreme Court case on our side, and we're going to win, and we're going to fight. But it's going to cost a lot of damn money, like it always does every time I have to take people to court. So we're going to win that, but there's a reason that they are trying to put us out of business. And it's not just because I didn't pay the taxes on Illinois beer, or we didn't hit some threshold of how much beer I had to make in Wisconsin versus Illinois. I think there's another reason. I'll tell you in private, but not when I've got Facebook 500,000 people able to hear it, because I only do that because I don't want them to get the same amount of shit that I get all the time. Okay, they're making a lot of money from me, and we have a great relationship. I don't want them to get screwed. So let's pour the wine. Now this is crazy. Why am I giving you wine in the middle of a beer tasting? Well, if you were in Sonoma, it would be sacrilegious, because now I'm screwing with your palates. But you're in northern Wisconsin, and there's no rules in northern Wisconsin. Absolutely no rules. So just appreciate that you're getting free wine, even though it might taste like hops. Okay. So choice wine. I'll talk about the wine in a second, but this is another reason why they're trying to pull my license, my brewer's license. Because, I'll talk about the wine first. Jim Obergefell from Obergefell v. Hodges gave us marriage equality. Obergefell v. Hodges happened in 2015. Jim Obergefell is a gay man from Ohio. And in Ohio, he wasn't able, his partner was dying. In Ohio, the laws were so strict, he wasn't able to visit his partner, nor was he able to sign any documents with lawyers or sign any stuff with the funerals. He wasn't able to do anything. And I think you got to have a heart made of absolute stone to think that somebody who loves somebody else shouldn't be able to do all that stuff and be with them when they're dying. And that is why in 2015, Obergefell v. Hodges went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, before it had a bunch of corrupt judges in it, ruled that same-sex couples should be able to get married. So if you go to Equality Vines, where Jim Obergefell is a co-owner of Equality Vines in Guernsville, California, the LGBTQ community makes pilgrimages there to meet Jim Obergefell and hug him, because they're able to get married now because of his Supreme Court case. Woo. So this winery does the same thing that I do. We find amazing brewers and we put labels around them and we give money to causes. So they do the same thing with wine. Somebody put me in touch with them, and they're great people. And we made this wine called Choice. And we give money to reproductive rights groups all throughout America every time a bottle of Choice is sold. So this is not shitty cranberry wine from like Eagle River. This is real wine that is real good from like Sonoma County. And they actually price it. It's $35 a bottle, which is more than you'll spend for Rosé or Sauvignon Blanc, but it's a hell of a lot less than you'll spend for the same liquid with a different label on it in Sonoma.
And it's good to drink some wine so that you know that the beer tastes better.
That's amazing.
So the story of this wine, they're taking my brewer's license away in part because I sell this wine to you as well. I can't get a distributor to bring the wine and import the wine in Wisconsin that's a normal distributor. So I found a wild distributor who is Larry Heisley Jr.'s son, who was a Milwaukee brewer. And this is his son, and he lives in Milwaukee. And they have a friend who coached like the Cubs and the Oakland A's called Dusty Baker. And Dusty Baker owns a vineyard in California. And so these guys have a distributor's license for wine just so they can bring in Dusty Baker's wine and sell it to a bunch of steakhouses in Milwaukee. Thank God they exist, because I found a legal way to get my wine into Wisconsin. And both of these guys are African American, and they're like, fuck yeah, we'll help you out because you're getting screwed. So, sorry, kids. So, unfortunately, they don't have a real distribution operation. And they don't even have like a truck that distributes the beer. And so I offered to help them out because we drive our beer all over Wisconsin, Illinois, and Minnesota because I can't get a distributor. Oh, shit. Sorry. Don't open that one under pressure. So we picked the beer up from them and we put it in our warehouse and then brought it up to our tap rooms because they didn't have the wherewithal to bring it from point A to point B. That is one of the violations that we are being put out of business for. The other violation is one of 80 complaints made by MAGA trolls, which is one of those complaints is we put COVID-19 vaccine in our beer. Because I'm known for getting bad reviews, fake bad reviews. And sometimes I respond to them and I post them on Facebook to get a few laughs. So I believe after somebody wrote a fake bad review about our beer, I said, of course it tastes bad because we put a sensor in our beer. And every time our sensor senses that you haven't had your vaccination shot yet, it blows up and puts COVID vaccine in it. Somebody called the Department of Health on me for that. And that was one of the complaints used to investigate our company, which ultimately ended up in us getting shut down. I would argue that these are very minor things and many of them aren't true. And there's another reason why they're trying to put us out of business. I'm going to talk about that reason after we pour fascist tears. Which, by the way, is a real hot seller right now. Because we've got eagle-eyed Kash Patel on the can. We've got Pete Hegseth, whose hairstyle, by the way, is made to look like a shit emoji on Facebook. And we've got Carolyn Levitt over here. I'll say a few words about them both. Our new summer session IPA is made with the fermented laments of some truly frustrated fascists. Eagle-eyed Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, gets so drunk that his staff needs to request breaching equipment to rescue him from behind locked doors. Pete Hegseth, who spent millions of your tax dollars renaming the Department of Defense the Department of War, gets regularly punked by his speechwriting staff. Instead of giving him Bible verses to read at Pentagon worship services, they plagiarize quotes from Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction. Remember that? Press Secretary Carolyn Levitt, while attempting to de-Pinocchio herself, getting a nose job, couldn't shake the curse. The cross around her neck now grows larger every time she lies to reporters. Our new IPA will only get better with age, as the impending implosion of American fascism will surely intensify the flavors that these organic tears add to the brew. Cheers! So why would the Department of Revenue try to be putting us out of business for putting vaccine in our beers and simply trying to help our distributor get my wine from point A to point B? It's because of two possible things. One, the Tavern League of Wisconsin is a very powerful Republican organization. Every bar in Wisconsin who wants a free ride service has to pay dues to the Tavern League of Wisconsin, and they work very hard to get Republicans elected in Wisconsin. They also work very hard to make sure that the taverns have to buy their liquor from about 5 families in Wisconsin who own all of the distribution companies in Wisconsin. Those families are the same beer distributors that I'm somehow still alive, even though I don't have to go through them to sell my beer. So the Tavern League of Wisconsin may have an in at the Department of Revenue and the agents there, or even more nefarious, over the last 2 years, I sued Democratic Governor Tony Evers, and I sued the Department of Public Instruction and raised about $250,000 from people donating $35 at a time to get rid of the voucher school, private voucher school system in Wisconsin. It is a parasitic program meant to take public tax dollars and redirect them to parents who are already sending their kids to Catholic schools, generally in Wisconsin, or religious schools. It is starving our public school system and has turned Wisconsin's public schools from a top 5 school system in this country about 30 years ago to now about 25 or 26 in Wisconsin. It's decimating our schools. It should be killed off, and I sued to the Supreme Court to do that. Tony Evers, who is funded by the voucher school lobby but is still a Democrat, wrote a letter to the Supreme Court, who we helped turn progressive, by the way, over the last 4 years. We elected 4 Supreme Court justices who are now tilting left. He wrote an amicus brief through the Department of Administration and said they should not take our case. And I suspect it's because he's getting a lot of money from the voucher school lobby. That is why I'm not entirely happy with the establishment of the Democratic Party, because they are doing things purposely to block progress in all states in America, but especially in Wisconsin. So I started shitting all over Governor Evers for the last 2 years because he's shitting all over kids in Wisconsin. by just being a patsy. He should have gotten out of government and let somebody who's willing to fight be the governor, and that's why we're backing Francesca Hong. But I believe, and it would be horrible if it's true, but I believe the governor he could stop the Department of Revenue's investigation to us right now if he wanted to, and he's not. And I fear it's because we're a little too loud and mouthy as the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, which is kicking everybody's ass right now throughout the country. Because we tell the truth and we don't take secret dark money. Okay, now, do you think he's friend or foe? Corvette, not a truck, not coal. Could be a limousine liberal. We don't know. We'll have to just ponder on that. Okay, Angie, we're going to pour the next one. So the next and final beer, we named this one after muckrakers. Has anybody ever heard of the term muckraker before? Let me tell you a little bit about muckrakers. So during the first Gilded Age, around the turn of the century, Teddy Roosevelt was the president, but we had a real problem. We had guys like Carnegie who did steel. We had guys like Rockefeller who did oil. We had Vanderbilt who did the railroads. We had J.P. Morgan who did the banks. These guys owned all of America, and most of the rest of America was struggling to get by. They were called monopolies back then. They were called trusts back then. And guess what we got today? Bezos, Zuckerberg, Musk, Thiel, Ellison. The same thing is happening today that happened 100 years ago, so we can learn from history. What happened? How did we break the monopolies and break the trust and give more power to working people? Well, a lot of that came through writers who were called muckrakers. There's a woman named Ida Tarbell who wrote in McClure's magazine, who wrote all about the struggles of the working class. I know more about a guy named Upton Sinclair who wrote The Jungle. Has everybody heard of The Jungle before from Upton Sinclair? Chicago should know about this because it's about the meat packing plant in Chicago where Polish immigrants came and worked at this meat packing plant. The company was all about profits and they didn't care at all about the workers. So they had these Polish immigrants go to their own housing that they created, but because they wanted to make as much money as possible, they created the housing very shabbily. And so the housing was drafty housing in the middle of Chicago 100 years ago before global warming got people sick. They also had their own grocery store that they were the ones who purchased the food to put in the grocery store for their workers. Because they were all about making as many profits as possible, they would put sawdust into the Spam, which passed for meat in these grocery stores. And that was written about in The Jungle, so these people weren't even getting nutrition because that was the only grocery store they could go to. And then when they went to work, if you got cut at the meatpacking plant, there was no medicine for you. And so you got sick and you got bacteria and you weren't able to work anymore. And so your entire family starved. There was no safety net for workers during the first Gilded Age. And so folks like Upton Sinclair, folks like Ida Tarbell wrote about that. And they disgusted Americans so much that they elected Teddy Roosevelt and they helped push change. And that change broke the trust and it gave power back to workers. And obviously more power is given back to workers during Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who's one of our most progressive presidents ever, who passed health care, and Lyndon Johnson, who passed Medicare and Medicaid, all that stuff. So why am I talking about this today? Well, we currently have muckrakers in America. One of the best muckrakers I think we have is Heather Cox Richardson, who, if you don't get what she writes every day, you should get it. She writes on Substack, which I believe is a platform that a lot of independent progressive media people are moving towards. Jim Acosta is now a muckraker, a 21st century muckraker. Jim Acosta was at CNN. He shat on Donald Trump, and at CNN fired him, or else they wouldn't allow him to say what he wanted to say, so he quit, and now he's on Substack. Well, guess what? The Minocqua Brewing Company is on Substack too, and I call myself a C- version of Heather Cox Richardson. But what we do is that I have Patty Vasquez, who's a talk show host in Chicago. I have Ben Cominos, a talk show host in Appleton, and we just added Mac McNeil, who's a progressive talk show host in the Twin Cities. They're all writing for me, and we're syndicating their radio shows in one place, and I write from time to time as well, and we're trying to spread the truth in the upper Midwest because our media is being bought up by the oligarchy. Larry Ellison now owns CBS. He's trying to own CNN. Elon Musk owns Twitter. Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. The dude who owns Time Magazine is Benioff from whatever, Salesforce.com. So all of our media is being bought up by the oligarchs. Guess what they don't want us to hear? The truth. They want us to hear propaganda so that we don't fight back. And so independent media is crucial right now. And that's why being a muckraker is so important. But not all of you have to be muckrakers because it's hard to build a huge social media following. But what you can do is you can go back to your communities and join indivisible. Obviously you got to march every 3 months when we have the No Kings marches, because then you get to meet other people who are part of the resistance. But that is not enough. You actually have to get involved locally. Of course, help your local progressive, especially if they're primarying an established Democrat, but help whoever wins in the primary beat the MAGA folks locally in your state assemblies or state senates. Even more important is for you to run for local office, school board, county board, town board. I've been trying to be shut down by a bunch of MAGA people on my town board and my county board for the last 5 years. If simple, honest people, as opposed to contractors who are just trying to figure out the next best deal for themselves through passing zoning laws, those are the guys who are running for county board and town board. Honest people who care about each other need to be running for these local offices, and it's a pain in the ass because you get messed with. If you're on the school board, people are yelling at you. If you're on the town board, people are yelling at you, but you got to do it. That's the only way we get our country back, is we change stuff at the local level. And if I can exist in 5 years as a blue dot in this crazy town, you can go back and be a little bit more sharp-elbowed in your communities. I guarantee you that. So thanks a lot for coming, everybody, and keep drinking. All right, cool. All right, we're gonna see if we can play this thing. Don't want to scare you. Well,
right there are your dancing feet. Yeah.
Well, we'll let it happen. Cheers. Thanks, man. Okay.
I'm local. I mean, I've got everything. It's unjust. I
tried to work with and it just was kind of weak.
How you're feeling
Oh, you got this on. You got this on.
Hey, little man, you ready to rock and roll? We're gonna go to camp. You want to go to camp? Let's see. It might be. So, see you in a bit.
Hey, bye-bye. Soda. Wow.
Wait, look at him drink a soda. Is that good?
You just say cheers.
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 That was a perfect tit for tat.
Okay.
I
We're
think
going to
we're
Walmart.
going to
Are you going to
Do you need
Walmart?
anything?
Are you going to Walmart? Where are you going? What?
Appreciate it, man. All right, brother. Thanks, man. All right. I'm going to turn this off. Boom, boom.
What are you doing? I did find this key on the ground.